Shalom. This week's parasha is Parashat Vayechi. What I want to start with this week is the connection between Vayechi as the end of Sefer Bereshit and the story of the Avot, the patriarchs, and the beginning of Sefer Shemot, the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And obviously there's a connection there. One book picks off where the other began, but I want to get to something that's between the lines. Earlier, we discussed the conflict that existed between the children of Yaakov and of Avinu. God had big plans for Yaakov's children, and sometimes we have a historical detour, a galut, because of our sins, and we have to compensate, we have to make up for what we did, we have to do complete teshuvah, and then we are worthy of a redemption. And I say we because the patterns that exist in Jewish history, the cycles, are continuing even into our days. We are the connection, we are the continuation of the Avot, and we have to constantly see ourselves that way so that we would want to repent and bring ourselves to the level that they were at and the level that we should be at. I mentioned how there was infighting among the brothers. Unfortunately, it got to the point where it says that they hated Yosef. It doesn't say that Binyamin was involved in the hatred, but it says that they hated him. Some of Farshim give different explanations, which of the brothers were closer to Joseph, if any, which of them weren't, how, according to one midrash, they even held court, so to speak, and tried Yosef in absentia and convicted him of trying to harm the others, perhaps even he was a threat to their life. It says that they hated him, and it says that, among other things, they thought to kill him, they thought to sell him into slavery. They certainly did much to fake his death and present it to their father like it happened. They did strip him of his clothes and throw him into a pit, into a place where his life was in danger. They did allow him to be kidnapped, and they also did not run and try to find him after they realized that he was gone. To his credit, it says that Reuven all along wanted to save Yosef and bring him back to his father, but the pasuk doesn't give him any credit for his plan because it failed. He might have been able to try something else. We don't know, but it doesn't give him credit for succeeding. And afterwards we saw that Reuven even criticized his brothers and said, I told you, we shouldn't have done this. Now we're getting our comeuppance. Then, a week later, we see in Parshat Vayigash that Joseph has brought his brothers to the point where they have to make a similar decision. And he tells them that because of Benjamin's crimes of theft, after he should have learned from his brothers, who, when they discovered that they had royal money in their sacks, they returned it dutifully. Now he's come and stolen the viceroy's chalice, his goblet, the one that he used to drink and the one that he uses for his incantations, and he should have learned, and now he's going to be taken as a slave. And Joseph has created a situation whereby the brothers have to decide what they're going to do. Are they going to stand up for their brother in this time of crisis? And it is Judah, who was the one who was originally the ringleader of the brothers. I mean, he continued being the dominant personality among them. He was the one who had suggested, when they all thought to kill him, that killing Joseph would not be profitable. Might as well just sell him to slavery. That way we'll be rid of him. And it's like we killed him, and we could get some money out of it, and he wouldn't actually be dead. This very same Judah was the one who then stood up for Benjamin and offered to let this viceroy take him as a slave instead of his younger brother. And that is what Joseph was apparently waiting for, because if he told them, when he revealed himself, he said, you've said all along that you don't know how your father will take this. It would be just terrible. How to break the news to him, it would kill him. The grief of having another son gone. He lost two sons. He lost Joseph. He lost Shimon, who was taken prisoner. And now Binyamin's gone. That'll just be the end of him. And he says, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? And the fellow's just been talking about his father the entire time. It's a rhetorical question. He's saying, didn't you care about my father? Didn't you think that making me disappear wouldn't have also caused our father terrible, life-threatening grief? Except the problem is that there's no recovery. Yes, the brothers reconcile, and Joseph is forgiving. he credits God. He even says this is all part of God's plan so that we could ride out this famine. There's another 5 years. They didn't question him at that point how he knew there was going to be another 5 years of famine, because they saw that he obviously knew more than they did, and he was obviously prepared for this famine that struck after the years of plenty. And he brought his father's family down to Egypt and all their children, and he provided for them and even gave them a good place to live. But the problem is that now we get to Vayechi and we see that they lasted for 17 years in the land, 12 additional years, and they're not getting out, and suddenly Yaakov Avinu has to have his most powerful son, the one who might have some political influence, yes, he's the ruler of Egypt, get me out of here, we're stuck. They're in a galut. Obviously, whatever they did wrong has not been sufficiently atoned for. What did they do wrong? They had fighting. They were willing to sell each other out. So they stood up for each other. Afterwards, Yaakov Avinu passes away, and it says that at that point, Yosef's brothers still feared him. I'll read the verse. We'll get back to the beginning of the parsha afterwards. After they had buried him, and they went home for a little bit just to bury their father where he said, it says, Vayiru achei Yosef ki met avihem. Yosef's brothers saw that their father had died. Well, of course they saw. It doesn't mean literally see. It means they understood. Vayomeru lu yistamenu Yosef. Yistamenu is the same verb that it says regarding Esav, bearing a grudge against Jacob. He stole his blessing. It says Vayistom Esav at Yaakov. He was planning to kill him at that point. So they were saying perhaps Yosef is still thinking badly against us. Now he waited for our father to pass away before he could punish us or take revenge. And now he's surely going to return all the bad that we have done to him. So they were afraid. It says they sent someone. Different sources indicate who is this someone to go talk to Yosef. And they said that their father had said before he died, please tell Yosef, forgive your brothers for all that they have done to you. And Yosef cried when he heard this. And then it says they went to him and they fell down on their faces in front of him, and they said, Hinenu l'chal avadim. Beforehand, the last time they bowed down to him was being in Vayigash. They didn't know who he was. But since then they haven't bowed down. Now came true the sort of the dream that he saw where they bowed down to him out of fear, out of Yosef. They bowed down to Yosef, not bowed down to Tzafnat Paneach, the viceroy of Egypt. They bowed down to their brother. And Yosef took this very well. He said, Al tira'u ki atachet Elohim ani. Don't fear, because I'm not in God's place. I don't play God. And v'atem chashavtem alai ra'ah. You thought to do bad to me. Elohim chashava l'tova. God thought it to be good. It means he had the last laugh. In order so that of this very day he can give life, or he can sustain a great nation. And then he told them, don't fear, I'm still going to take care of you. Yosef forgave them. Well, forgave them for what they did. But there's still something missing. What is missing? I'd like to offer that none of them were put in a situation where they could give their lives. Indeed, we see from the traditional interpretation of the Ten Commandments, it says don't tignov, what we say means stealing. But tradition has always told us it doesn't just mean theft, it means kidnapping. What's the connection? It says do not commit murder. It's okay to kill people sometimes in self-defense, or because that's justice. Certain people are put to death for crimes, and in war. But murder is unacceptable. The penalty for murder, anybody who commits murder, is deserving of death. So too kidnapping. Kidnapping is a high crime for which the perpetrator deserves death. That's the Chazal's understanding. They needed to put themselves into a situation where they were willing to give their lives for their brothers, because they were willing to take their brother's life, and they allowed their brother's life to be taken. That's what they presented to their father. What Yehudah did was show willingness to enter into slavery on behalf of his brother. He showed that he would rather live as a slave than see his father's grief at his beloved son being taken away as a slave. But we haven't seen here yet where the brothers are willing to give their lives for each other. At least the slave has a chance for emancipation. A slave has a chance for his brethren to redeem him with money, a good bribe. Sometimes that was that's the commandment. The person sold into slavery, even what's called avdut ivrit. It says, we talk about an evet ivri in the Torah. That's a normal thing done under a Jewish government. It's a commandment. It's a mitzvah of the closest relatives to pay the master and redeem their kinsmen from this indentured servitude. Kal v'chomer, if a Jewish person is ever taken in captivity or slavery by non-Jews, it's the highest commandment for other Jewish people to raise funds and redeem him from captivity, unless, of course, they're asking exorbitant sums in order to extort the Jewish community, in which case the Mishnah says that shouldn't be done. But there is hope for a slave. There is hope, and a slave can even sometimes escape. It's happened. But to offer one's life on behalf of a brother is something they were not yet tried, and something they did not try to do. They didn't have this opportunity yet. They haven't shown this yet, and therefore, technically speaking, they haven't atoned for their sin. Another sin, which is described explicitly, is the one of dibara al Vayechi et dibatamra al avihem. That's what you and I call lashon hara, and we haven't yet seen in this week's parasha where they atone for this. There is no point where a person refuses to hear lashon hara. There is no point where someone decides, no, I'm not going to listen to lashon hara. There is no point where we see anything like that. There's no point where we see people continuing to speak lashon hara. Perhaps we don't know. There's a machlokas here. Did Yaakov Avinu really tell his sons, go tell Yosef to forgive the brothers? Is that just something that they were saying in order to save face? We see that sometimes telling lies for the sake of peace, if a person gets permission from his parents, if the Navi tells him to, if the Beit Din tells him to, he can lie to protect himself. The Avot did that sometimes. They had the right to do so. We don't know. We don't see that. However, we do see that they became aware of the fact that this galut is setting in. Not only did Yaakov Avinu beg to be buried back in the land of Canaan, the story continues many years after Yaakov Avinu dies. Yaakov Avinu passes away at the age of 56, when Yosef is 56, and Yosef is going to pass away at the end of this book at the age of 110, which means he lived for another 54 years after his father's passing. According to outside traditions, that is not explicit in the Torah, but according to our traditions, the last of the brothers to die was Levi, because it says that he passed away at the age of 137. Levi was about 5 years older than Yosef, which means he outlived Yosef by about 22 years. And in that time, between when Yosef, who was the first of the brothers to pass away at the age of 110, and Levi, who died at the age of 137, all the other brothers passed away. And you could even check, there's some other books that even have the yurt sites and the ages of the brothers when each one of them passed away. We see here that Yosef, who was the first to go, had made his brothers promise along the same lines as he did, except Yosef didn't know if they would be able to keep that promise. What was that? Take me out of here. I don't know when we're going to get out of Egypt. Now we've been stuck here 54 years plus 17, original 17 years of Yaakov's life, plus another 54 years. That's 71 years. And Yosef was viceroy 9 years before that. A total of 80 years of Yosef's life they spent in this Egyptian galut, plus another 20 years of Levi's time. That means that from when Yosef became viceroy until Levi passed away was about 122 years, a whole lifetime, the maximum lifetime for a human being, and there was no end in sight. Yosef said, God will redeem you from here, you'll take me out of here. But they didn't see an end. This is the tunnel, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, where is it? And it's only going to get worse once Levi died. It says the entire generation passed away. That's when Pharaoh decided that it came time to subjugate the people. Where is the redemption? Where is it going to be? It closes, it doesn't say it explicitly, Vayisem Baron b'Mitzrayim, the fact that the Sefer ends, Joseph was put in a sarcophagus in Egypt. That's where it freezes. Nothing happens. It also says they embalmed him. Embalming something means it just stays that way for thousands of years, and they put it in a sarcophagus. I mean, nowadays you go to museums, you can still see the same mummies that they made and put in those gigantic sarcophagi are still around today. This is like saying the Jewish people were stuck in Egypt, just like this mummy. They were put in there, embalmed. They're not changing. They're not a living nation, and they're stuck in Egypt. That's where we get to. Where is the Geula? It's not here. The sages used to call what we call Shemot, was called along similar lines as we say in English, Exodus. It was Sefer Yetziat Mitzrayim, or Sefer HaGeula, the book of redemption. This book is a book that ends with complete galut. We don't know where to go from here because we've started with something that needed to be fixed and we have not fixed it yet. And I'll jump a little bit ahead to next week's parasha, and we'll see that something began to change. Yosef came to Egypt, and he had a certain status. He went from being a slave, a foreigner, a slave, perhaps he didn't even know Egyptian, known as the Hebrew, and he rose to be the viceroy, so much so that his brothers didn't even recognize him. It says he recognized them and they didn't recognize him. It says it a few times. They couldn't have recognized him. He was so changed. And he represented Egypt. He was, like Pharaoh says, I am Pharaoh, but you're Egypt. Yet, we're going to see that the change starts with Moshe Rabbeinu, who's basically, in every way, the opposite of Yosef, because it's in Moshe Rabbeinu's time that we are going to see a major change. That the actual tikkun, that which the Jewish people needed to do to get over that hump and become deserving of redemption, happened through Moshe Rabbeinu. Hope we'll see you that next week. I'd like to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom this week at least. And don't forget, any questions, please send them to the website. We'll be happy to talk about them.